Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm just sitting down and filming a whole bunch of story times that I have, and I want to tell you guys. So today's story time is going to be about the messy breakup before homecoming. I am going to put like a trigger warning for SA in this story time. I will put a timestamp. Without further ado, let's get straight into today's story time. Also, I will be looking over here because this is the direction my mirror is in, and I would love to see what I'm doing. Back when I was 5, I had met this girl in school, and we are going to call her Emily. And Emily lived right by me, actually. I didn't know it at first, but we would always hang out. We were super good friends. And in second grade, we had met this girl that she introduced me to, who we are going to call Chastity. Well, fast forward a little bit, and Chastity, Emily, and I become a really solid friend group. We're always hanging out. The only time we could actually hang out like all together was if it was somebody's birthday, because around like 4th or 5th grade, Emily moved out of my neighborhood, and then eventually a couple years later, so did Chastity, and I was pretty much the only one left in this shit neighborhood, and we just really like didn't hang out anymore, but we would always keep in contact, and we all still went to the same school, which was really nice. Well, fast forward to 2020, I kind of lost contact with Emily because I didn't have a solid Snapchat at the time, and we just had really no way of keeping in contact. But summer 2020 rolls around, and the one day I'm added into this group chat on Snapchat, and it is made by Chastity, and Emily is also in it. And so we're like, and they're like, oh, hey, like, because keep in mind they moved in the same neighborhood. They're like, oh, hey, like, want to hang out, like, to each other and everything. And they are, like, talk about how they're going to go to the park and everything, because they have a park in their neighborhood. And I was just like, okay. Well, the one day, they ended up calling me. And we were all in group chat, everything was going good. And, well, no, it was actually Chastity that called, and then eventually Emily joined. And pretty much she was like, oh, hey, I don't know who you are. And just pretty much acting like she doesn't know me, like we haven't been best friends for all this time, which actually low-key hurt my feelings. And they were just kept ignoring me and, like, talking to each other, so I felt really left out. Well, as I said, I just really felt like they were leaving me out, so I kind of distanced myself from Chastity especially, and I didn't even really talk to, Emily. Almost said her real name for a second. So, pretty much, eventually, that kind of dies down, because they would always be like, oh, hey, want to meet up at the park? And then they'd be like, oh, hey, sorry, Alexis, like, we're going to go meet up at the park, like, we'll talk to you later. And I was just like, oh, okay. Well, fast forward to summer 2021, and I decide to throw this party. So, pretty much, I ended up inviting Chastity to this party, and since I had lost Emily's Snapchat, I was like, hey, also, can you tell Emily that I said she can come too? And they're like, and Chastity's like, yeah, like, I'll have to get a ride with her anyway. So I'm like, okay. So, this party, I did a story time on because a lot of shit went down at it. So if you haven't seen that story time, go watch it. I'll, like, put it in the description if I can. But pretty much, the party is going good and everything, and then eventually I'm about to get in the pool with everybody, and I start to feel really, really lightheaded. And I'm like, okay, well, like, maybe it's just, like, the heat. So I look at Chastity, I'm like, hey, like, I'm getting a little bit lightheaded. I was about to go in the pool with everyone. Do you want to come into the front yard with me and sit down for a second? While we were sitting in the front yard, Chastity is like, hey, like, since you're about to be done with, like, your current, like, girlfriend, will you consider giving Emily a chance? And I thought this was a little bit weird, like, I just didn't know what to say, but I definitely thought it was a bit weird. I was like, I don't have feelings for her, but, like, maybe. And we left it at that, and I kept noticing, like, throughout the party that I would be kind of doing my own thing, and then I would look over, and Chastity and Emily would be in the front yard talking, and whenever I tried to come up to them, they would both give me a weird look, and Emily would just, like, walk right past me, like nothing ever happened. And so I thought, well, they're not talking shit, because they're my best friends. They wouldn't do that. Long story short, just because you're your best friends does not mean they're not going to talk shit about you. Some best friends do, some best friends are real. Anyway, that's actually not what happened. I was just, like, kind of, like, giving you guys a little advice there. But anyway, later that night, after everything happened and the party ended, I get a text on Snapchat around midnight from not Chastity, Emily. And she's like, hey, like, I have to tell you something, and you can't judge me for it. And I was like, okay, go ahead, like, you're my best friend, I wouldn't judge you. And I low-key already knew that this is what it was going to be, but she's like, hey, like, pretty much I like you a lot, and I was wondering if you would give me a chance. And keep in mind, I did not like her. As I said in the beginning, I never had feelings for her. I don't know why I did that. But I was like sitting in a rock and a hard place pretty much, because I had feelings for this one kid in my friend group who, by the way, absolute sweetheart. We are currently together, actually. It's my current boyfriend. And you know, I just didn't know how to say no to people. That's, like, really important for, like, the rest of the story, too, is I just did not know how to say no to people. So, pretty much whatever people wanted is whatever they got at the time. Now, I would not be like that, but, like, back then, I was like that, and so we started dating. And right away, what does she does? I don't even make sense. What did she do? She asked me for nudes, and I was taken aback, but I was, like, really reluctant at first. And then the next day rolls around. And me and my two now ex-best friends, we found out that my ex had given us head lice. It's gone now, but, like, it was so disgusting. I literally just felt like vomiting everywhere, and I knew my mom was going to be pissed. She was going to be pissed off, like, really bad. Not at me, but, like, at the fact that I caught it. So I was like, shit, like, how do I tell my mom? Like, this was as bad as telling her I was pregnant. Okay, that's over dramatic, because my mom would literally murder me if I told her I was pregnant at this age. Understandably, 1000% understandably. But I was, like, shitting bricks to tell my mom. And so I run into the house, and I tell my sister, and I'm like, oh my god, like, mom's gonna kill me. Because my parents weren't there at the time, and what happened to my chapstick, but anyway. And she's like, what, why? And I'm like, Izzy, give me head lice. Anyway, so I call Emily, because we were planning to have a sleepover. So I call Emily, and I'm like, hey, sorry, I can't hang out with you. We can't have this sleepover for a while, because my ex gave me head lice, and my other friends have it too. And so she's like, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, I kind of don't care what you think, because I can't do shit about it. I'm pretty clean, so I know it was definitely not me. My roommate get messy sometimes, but it's not messy enough to be like, oh yeah, like, I'm gonna get head lice. Like, it was fucking gross. Like, my hair was soaked in it. It was nasty. So pretty much every day, my mom had to sit and put vinegar in my hair and comb it out, get all the bugs out. It was nasty. Nasty. Though I had head lice and was going through a lot, Emily did not stop crying for nudes every night. That was literally all she did, was cry for nudes every night. And another thing I had noticed, which was a red flag that I tried to brush off for some stupid reason, was that, like, she literally, when I would, like, tell her something personal, she'd just be like, oh, okay, can you send nudes? You don't do that if you truly care about somebody. So I knew she really didn't care, but I didn't want to think like that. I was like, yeah, like, she does care. Like, she's my girlfriend. She wouldn't be with me. She didn't care, which is absolutely lies looking back on it. But me being me, I didn't want to think they were lies. But even though I didn't think they were lies, they were still obviously huge as lies. Just nothing but bullshit. Now I really felt torn because she just kept, like, I was trying to force myself to have feelings for her, even though I didn't and I knew I wouldn't. I just still kept trying because I really wanted to make this work with her. But eventually, a few weeks later, school's already started, and this is important for later in the story, but we had our seats next to each other in a global because that was the only class we had together. And eventually, a couple weeks after the whole head lice incident, we end up having a sleepover at my house. But that same day, literally the entire, and I mean the entire friend group was out and all hanging out, and we were all going to hang out. And you guys probably know Ashley and Kate from one of the previous stories I did. Kate's sisters were going to be at Ashley's house, and I became good friends with them at Ashley's Labor Day party. So I was excited to see them again. Like, I was really excited because, like, I thought they didn't like me at first, but we became best friends. Fast forward, my old friend comes to visit, so it's me, my old friend, Aaliyah. That's her actual name. She's chill. She's chill. She's been in a lot of my videos on, like, my old channel. She's so nice. And she's, like, one of my besties. But, and it was just a fun environment, honestly. And then, eventually, pretty much a little while, Emily gets there. And another thing that was weird was that Emily would be like, you cannot, and I mean you cannot tell Chastity that I'm sleeping over at your house. Like, you cannot tell her. And I was like, okay. Also, one thing that I did kind of fail to mention in the story time so far is that literally when I'd be like, oh yeah, like, sorry, you can't send nudes tonight, because I knew she was going to ask, or anything, which I didn't even want to in the first place, and I avoided it as best as I possibly could. She was like, why? She would literally just spam the letter Y in the chat until I was like, because, and then she's like, why? And then she gets so fucking frustrated when I didn't send nudes, because first of all, I didn't want to. Second of all, I was going through enough, I just wanted to fucking sleep. I had to have fucking vinegar in my hair. I smelled terrible. I was going through a lot of friend group shit at the time, and I just was so pissed off when she'd keep being like, oh my god, why, like, girl, shut up with your why, and, you know, that kept happening, and literally, anytime I tried to talk to her about my feelings, she'd be like, oh, haha, like, yeah, it's kind of whatever. Like, she would literally just brush my feelings off, and I was getting pissed off, because I'm telling you for a reason, dude. I'm just trying to vent. I know she was probably having a few bad days, but, like, just wait till you hear what she does to me, and then you guys will see why I hate this bitch so much. Well, fast forward to later that night, because this is where shit really gets bad. I'm going to put a timestamp in here for essay warning. We talk a lot about sexual assault. I don't go into detail, but there's mentions of it, and I just wanted you guys to be aware, in case that triggers you. But anyway, with that being said, later that night, she was like, at first, it was consensual, okay? At first. And so, you know, eventually she ended up essaying me. Because I literally said, and you guys are confused because I said, well, it was consensual. Listen to this bullshit. So I told her at like 4 in the morning, I was tired, I rolled over on my side. And she continued. So the next morning comes around, there's no mentions of it, we don't talk about it. And another thing that pissed me off real quick, was that literally she was like, why are you crying? I wonder why. Sorry for raising my voice, but I wonder why. Maybe you're doing things I don't want to be done to me. Fast forward to the next morning. The problem from last night is not talked about. I was scared to bring it up. I thought it was normal, honestly. Like, I just thought it was normal. I was that, like, blind. And that's another thing that pissed me off, is, like, I was so blind where I was just like, oh, haha, like, yeah, it's normal. But in reality, no, it is not. It's not okay at all. But anyway, So the friend group ends up splitting apart that day. I'm not going to go into too much detail. But a couple days later. Because see, keep in mind though, like before the whole thing happened, like before the sleepover happened, homecoming was coming up and we had already made plans to go to homecoming together. So remember how I said that we had third period together? Well, pretty much a couple days later, I am heading out of I'm heading to fourth period. And she was there that day too. Emily was definitely like there at class. I remember clearly. I get a text and she pretty much breaks up with me. She's like, hey, like, I'm scared. She never said what she was scared of, but she just pretty much broke up with me. And I was just like, and she's like, can we still be friends? And I'm like, yeah, whatever. Well, I don't, and I was like, well, do you see us getting back together in the future? She was like, maybe. Honestly, I don't even know why I said that. I should not said that because, like, girl. Another thing was she was probably scared, though, because her parents, well, her mom and her family just hated me for some reason. Even though I've been her best friend for literally 10 years. Her parents hated me for some reason. Like, I don't even know why. I don't even know what I did to them. But, I mean, it's really not relevant at the end of the day. But pretty much, she was probably scared of them finding out about us. And her parents weren't that supportive of everything she did, so I can see that. But then eventually we stay in contact rarely over Snapchat. And keep in mind, I eventually get in a relationship in the middle of October, and I'm still in that relationship, and everything's going good. And she'd be like, hey, like, she would just, like, swipe up on my stories a lot, and then she'd be like, texting, I didn't find out until after, but she would be texting, Chastity, and she'd be like, I'm worried about my friendship with Alexis, like, she seems so distant from me. And another thing is, like, literally, she would be like, she'd still do the why thing. She'd be like, oh, why do you feel this way? Oh, why did you do that? Why? Just why? Everything with her was why. And it was so annoying. Like, you sound like a 3-year-old. Stop with the why already. And so I was fucking pissed off. Like, I just was not having this why bullshit anymore. I just wasn't, okay? And then eventually I was going to tell, I almost said her, like, code name. I was going to tell Chastity about the whole, situation that happened at the sleepover, but I decided not to until around January 28th. So on January 28th, I had texted, oh my god, I almost said her name. I had texted Chastity and I was like, oh my god, hey girl, like, tell you something. And I thought she was going to murder me. And keep in mind though, like, Emily, like, before this whole thing happened, like, she was not a smoker. She was actually against smoking. She was, like, really, like, she was really nice, but then she became emo. There's nothing wrong with being emo. I'm just, like, saying, like, she changed. And then she started vaping, and it just was a whole mess. And she almost got Chastity in trouble multiple times for vaping. And keep in mind, another thing that I failed to mention is that, like, homecoming, as I said, we had planned to go to homecoming, but I got COVID, and I texted her, and as soon as I got my test back, and she was like, and keep in mind, I felt like I was on my deathbed when I had COVID. Like, I seriously felt like I was on my deathbed. She was like, oh my god, why can't we go to homecoming? Why can't we go to homecoming? Why can't we go to homecoming? I have COVID. And then she's like, well, why can't we go to homecoming? I literally have COVID. Like, bitch, what? And that being said, I was super pissed off, and I just kind of ignored her. But fast forward, and then eventually, Chastity's like, well, I'll help you confront her about what happened at the sleepover. And so we confront her. I have all the screenshots. And I did not tell her that I was going to go to the cops about it. So right before I ended up, like, confronting her, a couple days or something before that, I my mom was having a couple beers with my dad the night, and I told my mom, like, hey, I need to tell you something. I'm scared, like, you're gonna hate me, like, you're gonna disown me, like, you hate me. And I started fucking bawling. And she's like, what is it? Like, I'm not gonna hate you. And then I was like, so remember how Emily slept over that one night? She's like, yeah, like, did you guys sneak out? And I was like, no, like, it's way worse than that. Like, it's bad. And she's like, okay, well, what happened? And I told her, like, yeah, she essayed me. And then my mom just starts fucking bawling. And I felt so bad. Because at this point, I had put my poor mother through enough than she even deserved to be put through. Because my mom is literally such a sweetheart. Mom, if you're watching this, I literally love you. Like, thank you so much for everything you do for me. And she starts just fucking bawling. And she was not mad. I'm so sorry, my thing stopped recording again. But, like, that night, she taught me pretty much, like, okay, like, come sit in the living room with me. And I was like, okay. I thought she was just gonna talk to me. But she actually told me, like, we made up these, like, fake scenarios where she would, like, pretend to, like, essay me, like, pretend to, and teach me, like, this is how you say no. You are allowed to say no. She even had me scream at multiple times. My mom's a literal goat. Like, we love my mom. My mom is literally amazing. She's a queen. And that's that. That's all there is to it. But literally, because I was like, well, I just didn't know how to say no to her, like, and then, keep in mind, eventually I end up going back to school, and pretty much, when I go back to school, we still had third period together, but our seats weren't next to each other no more. I told, my teacher for my fourth period class that, like, yeah, like, about, like, that I had to see her and everything, and how it drives me insane, and she sent me to the counselor's office at the very end of the period to get my schedule switched. She didn't send me, like, before the end of the period just because she wanted me to, like, you know, she didn't want me to miss any more class that day, because this is when I just went back to school. And so I go down there, and eventually, you know, my counselor leaves it at that. Well, at the end of the day, I get called down to the office, and the assistant principal, who was literally a sweetheart, she was like, so I need you to write a statement because the word, you know, was thrown around. Not thrown around, but, like, spoken of, pretty much. So I'm like, okay, so I write this statement, and first she asked me, like, is it true? And I'm like, yeah. And then she had a little talk, and she was like, you do not have to do anything you don't want to, like, and I was just like, yeah, I just didn't know how to say no. Literally, she was such a sweetheart, and I've dealt with the assistant principals multiple times because of everything going on. But she was such a sweetheart about it, which I'll always be thankful for, because I know some people can be like, well, it's the way you dress, like, it's the way you look. Like, if you didn't dress so slutty, it's not how you dress. The only cause of assault is, you know, so, literally, I hate them type of people, but eventually, my mom's like, we are getting this dealt with, we are going to the cops, and we went to the cops, and they were super understanding, and the investigator working my case is like, yeah, I'll talk to her, so long story short, she was put on probation, and had to do community service. Okay, so this is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm sorry this had a lot to do with essay. But this is just, like, how everything went down. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video. And bye, guys.